Hello guys, I'm Lego Technic and you might have remembered this video from 2 weeks ago where I built this frame, and there I said that in the next episode I was gonna build the axles and then test the chassis. Today our task is to do just that, and let's talk about how I'm gonna do it. So for the axles themselves, as I mentioned, I'm gonna use the planetary hubs as I mentioned in the previous video, and I will also use these red differentials because they give a nice amount of gearing, and I feel like that will be very needed since the drivetrain is rather complicated and this is going to be a quite heavy model. There's also going to be a live axle suspension for which I've prepared the mounts in here. As you can see, there are the mounts for the links and then the drive shaft, and that's it for the axles. There's also going to be a differential lock which is going to be connected through these levers here, and it's really funny because I originally planned to have this link that is set up like that, and that would have allowed me to have a nice and compact little differential lock mechanism. However, I realized that when the axle tilts, the link stays in the same position, but it moves relative to the axle, and then the differential can unlock and lock by itself, which we don't want. So instead, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set it up to be like that, because the axle barely moves at all in that direction, which means that once the differential is locked, it will stay locked. So that's basically the plan for now, and wish me luck, as usual. Okay, so I'm having a bit of a problem with the front axle, since, as you can see, I had to make a custom frame. So previously I was working on this prototype, which was nice and all, but there was no way to fit the steering motor, and I want to have it on the axle since the front part of the chassis is occupied by the gearbox motor. So basically the only way I could fit it was if I moved the driving wheel for locking it on the same axle. And one way I could do that with a pre-made frame was with this 7x11 stud frame. And that one had a big flaw, which was that if I put the differential like this, you can see that there's a big overlapping here, and it would only make sense to put the drive shaft right there. So the approach angle would be just terrible, and it wouldn't be able to tackle any obstacles that are taller than half of the tire size, which is just terrible for an off-road vehicle like this. So I ended up settling for a custom frame like this. This is not the final version, it's just built to demonstrate the final form factor and all that, and everything is nice and level except for the differential gear, but that will not actually collide with the motors, so I guess we're fine. And I also need to figure out how to secure the frame so it doesn't do this, because that can cause gear skipping. And that's basically it in terms of progress. I've went through 3 configurations of this frame, and only one of them is on camera. Most of it is not on camera because I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, and I just didn't want to film it. But now that we got the main thing figured out, I just have to do the other most difficult part, which is attaching the lever so that it's actually accessible and the steering motor does not block it. Focus. So the steering motor does not block the differential locking lever. I have still no idea how to do that, but again, wish me luck. I wish myself luck, and let's see how it goes. Okay, so as you can see here, I did not actually install the lever first. I installed the steering, sort of. I mounted the hubs and I began to make the steering. And here is a trick that I learned from Attica. You can also use this gear instead of a 12-tooth gear if you have enough space to do it and if there is a reason to do it. And I think this is a pretty useful trick. And yeah, it did actually turn out useful here. So about the mounting of the lever for the differential locking, I'm still not sure how I'm gonna do it, because now we have these little mounts here and then I have to route the lever and then I can't do it because of this. So in general the whole thing will have to be redesigned a billion times, and I'm not gonna film that. I'm just gonna notify you if something goes well. I got a bit carried away with the time lapse, that is the lack of it, because now the axle itself is completely done and it is almost completely mounted. The shock absorbers are there, the links are there, the drive shaft is there. It's just that the differential lock had a bit complications. It was supposed to be here, but you couldn't exactly connect the link directly. So I had to move it over there, and even then it's not exactly ideal. So I have to figure out somehow how to move it one stud backward or one stud forward. And I also need to move the worm gear from here to right there. And there is also a little bit of an issue with the axle doing that. So I will attach a panhard rod too. And I assume the rear axle will be much simpler to do, so I'm gonna film that too. And as you can see, I have these nice and cool wheels. And one thing I didn't really know about is how wide the axle is in comparison to the frame. But I guess it'll be fine. It's better for the axle, for the frame to be too narrow than for it to be too wide. So I'm just gonna finalize the mount for the front axle and then I'm gonna start working on the rear one. both axles are connected now, and as you can see, the truck that is the chassis is kind of complete. We'll get to that later. And as you might have noticed, these two differential locks are no longer on the same side of the vehicle. Why? Because if they were on the same side, then the differentials would have had to be on the same side too, which would mean that the wheels would roll in opposite directions if I turn the model on. So then I had to rebuild the entire rear axle and then also move the linkage to the other side, but everything turned out to work fine. However, there are three main problems with the truck once I tested it indoors, and I will not be testing it outdoors anytime soon because right now it's around 35-36 degrees outside, and that is not very ideal conditions for human beings to be outside right now. So indoor test it is until the weather cool down. There are three main issues. First of all, these front wheels they collide with the steering arms, and this maybe can be solved by implementing Ackermann geometry, except that first of all it will be reverse Ackermann geometry. Second of all, there will be no way to use a large gear rack, which would complicate things even further. And the second issue is that it's very slow and very noisy. The noise actually does not fully come from the knob gears, it partially does, but they are lubricated so they don't make as much noise. It comes from the engine, because every time this camshaft hits the cylinders, it's like a small sound, and since the engine moves extremely fast, then it's really loud and very annoying. And it's also very slow, mainly because I have implemented a 3:1 gear ratio for the differential, and also another more than 2:1 ratio over here in the differentials. So right now it's about as fast as the Zetro set. Maybe I can fix that by changing the gear ratios in the gearbox, so that instead of 1:1 it would be 3:5 or even 3:1, and maybe that would fix some things, because right now the difference between the gears in the gearbox is very low. And the third major issue is that the differential locks, these front and rear ones, when they unlock the differential, the central one locks, so that's not exactly ideal. And how do I fix this? Well, as you can see here, maybe I can make some sort of solution that instead of going all the way around like that, I can maybe use this axle here to go directly there, and then all three axles will be rotating in the same direction. This is maybe wrong, I don't know, I haven't done the calculations, and most of my assumptions on this channel are wrong, but we'll see if I can make everything work out. I thought I had it with issues and all that, but I didn't. So the three main problems: the loudness, the differential lock, and the steering. I solved two of them. Actually, I solved one. The loudness problem remains unsolved because it turned out that it was after all the knob gears, but I'm too lazy to fix it. And when I cover the buoys more with bodywork, because right now they're very exposed, hopefully it's gonna get a little bit better. And if it doesn't get better, then I don't care. The steering motor, that is a steering mechanism problem with the wheels colliding. As you can see, I solved it by just adding bigger wheels. And why exactly did I add bigger wheels? And they're also wider, so why? Because that enabled me to make a little contraption like that, which basically allows me to space the wheels by half a stud so that they are just on the border between touching the steering arms. You can't really see it. There we go. So they're at a very small distance. And the bigger wheels look worse, but they also look better in a way, because with bigger wheels the proportions are just way better, but the tread pattern and the rim to tire ratio is not ideal. But I still think they look better than the original tires. And the issue that did not manage to be solved by me is the differential lock. I originally planned to have a rubber band like that. Actually, first I planned to just reroute the gearing, but then that didn't work, and then I planned to have a clutch gear, a white one, but that also didn't work, and then in desperation I settled for the option of a rubber band, which did not work because the rubber band was old and it also put a lot of stress, and for some reason this rear differential lock is acting up all the time, despite me putting a little bit of tissue right here. Come on, focus, 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 focus. I put a little bit of tissue here, and despite that, the friction is still incredibly low. So that rear differential lock takes a lot of time to engage and disengage. Which means that by the time it engages, something will go wrong with the rubber band. And that's what happened to me. But at least I managed to solve the slowness problem partially. It's still slow, but not painfully slow in the second gear. But in first gear it's still as slow as before. And it's still a little bit hot outside, so there were no outdoor tests, and I'm actually really glad because I would have one more issue to deal with. And most of the work was done off camera because this time it was not because I didn't know I was doing, despite I actually did not know what I was doing, but that's not the reason. The reason is that most of the work was me staring at the build with that thinker posture and thinking to myself, how the hell can I solve this issue? Why is it so impossible? And that was 90% of the work that was off camera. And I bet you would not like to watch that, even on a time lapse. But I promise now I'm gonna film some more on camera, time lapse. Because there is this one thing left to solve, and if I don't solve it, I don't know. I don't know. Okay, so I finally managed to solve the differential lock problem. And everything seems to work fine, a little bit jerky, and the motor clearly struggles logging the differentials, but hey, it works. And as I said in the first episode, it's better for something to work inefficiently than not work at all. Uh, there have been some other minor issues, which is axle sliding out right here and right there. But I think that can be fixed relatively easily. It's just it will take a lot of time to disassemble everything and then put it back together. Speaking of a lot of time, this episode is taking a lot of time, and with all the clips combined, it will be probably around 25 minutes, maybe slightly less. And that will be my longest video so far. So I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you know what to do. If you didn't, then don't do it. And with that, I am out. Bye.